After thousands of years of evolution, we still couldn't learn as species that war is a terrible idea. While Putin has the sole responsibility of this war, killing civilians and the destruction of a sovereign nation, it's still suspicious that the whole media is agreeing on something, while pushing their own propaganda. The biggest tragedy of this war is definitely the humanitarian aspect. And hopefully the people of Ukraine and Russia will get over this as quickly as possible. But today we're going to take a look at the economical aspect of this situation. We're about to enter the second recession in 3 years. After the invasion, the Western countries united against Russia, which is probably the right thing to do. The sanctions include kicking them out of the SWIFT and, more importantly, freezing the central bank assets overseas. The SWIFT ban will prevent Russian banks from trading at high volume and mark the country a bad place to hold currency. Russia's economy is basically dead. Their only major trading partner is China now, and China will take advantage of this dependency. Apparently, Putin thinks it's a better idea to be inside of Xi's pocket rather than Ukraine having independency. Economic sanctions are a great deterrent, but it can also provide a great tool for the authoritarian leader to rally his country behind him. Also, a desperate madman with nuclear weapons is not the great adversary for the global stability. Central bank asset freeze is an unprecedented measure. Russia was prepared for the sanctions, and their central bank had around $640 billion of foreign exchange reserves. But most of that money was in Western banks. Those funds are frozen now, 400 billion of them. The central bank won't be able to sell dollars to stabilize the ruble, which is down by 30% since the beginning of the year. Only action to take was doubling the interest rates to 20%. After the war broke out, the central bank stopped their payments to the international creditors, which is a technical default, and that money is going to fund their war now. They have a remaining $240 billion in a war that's costing them $20 billion a day to wage. Russia's energy exports are bringing $1 billion a day. But even though the energy trade is exempt from the sanctions, the international buyers are staying away from Russian oil as if it was unavailable, in order to prepare themselves if that becomes a reality. Cutting Russia from the rest of the world will have a huge impact. Russia is the third biggest oil producer, so oil and gas prices immediately went up. Higher energy prices means higher transportation costs, which means more inflation in almost every sector. Not only did Europe do little to diversify their energy imports, they also closed down their own coal and nuclear power plants. Depending so highly on a dictator is proven to be a terrible idea once again. Sanctions will take on their toll on the food industry, maybe even more. Synthetic fertilizers need a lot of natural gas. Russia plays a big part on producing synthetic fertilizers. More expensive fertilizers means more expensive food everywhere. Both Russia and Ukraine are big exporters of wheat. Grain prices will increase. So will the sunflower oils. Countries like Egypt and Lebanon rely heavily on the imports from Russia and Ukraine. Major brands halted their operation in factories, such as Nestle, Cargill, Carlsberg, Oreo, and more. Unfortunately, food shortages might be on the horizon. Let's move on to the metal. Manufacturing industry needs metals, ones that Russia mine, like aluminum, nickel, palladium, and titanium. Aluminum is used to make almost everything. Batteries need nickel. Electronics need palladium. Getting your hands on those metals will be harder now. And also, increased natural gas prices will also contribute to reduced output of mining. Germany announced they will allocate 100 billion euros for the defense budget next year. Other European countries are soon to follow. Increasing defense budget will take up space from education, health, transportation, and infrastructure. Since the war broke out, IMF course-corrected their prediction for inflation, doubling up to 4% globally next year, and the GDP will shrink by 0.4%. If the conflict persists, those figures might inflate. So, food prices will go up, energy, raw materials, manufacturing will be costlier, trade output and GDPs will shrink. Inflation will become even worse. What a bright future is waiting for us. We're actually in the beginning of this crisis, and the real effect will show its ugly face towards the summer. This situation especially proved that as humans, we are all responsible for one another. Russia's government is causing suffering to everyone in the world. And these corrupt political and economical systems must come to an end if we want to survive. This was the New Media Army, and see you on the next one.